Within the indie horror scene, there's a lot of subgenres or styles that have definitely blown up in popularity. One example is the PlayStation-styled horror game, where it's a scary game, but it's got that classic 32-bit PlayStation look. Tons of games utilize this style for many different reasons, whether to elicit that classic survival horror feel, or just to make your game look grungier. With all of these 32-bit horror games out there, where are all of the 64-bit horror games? Nintendo 64, while not as popular in the horror scene as its estranged stepsister, the PlayStation, it does have a decent amount of representation in the indie horror community. Games like Shipwreck 64 and Catastrophe Crow gained a pretty big following utilizing the style to great effect. There's also Go Go Hamster Chef, which is not talked about nearly enough. I love that game like a son. Recently, there's one N64 horror game that I've actually been hearing a lot about that I finally decided to check out, and it's titled Kitty Kart 64. Is it weird that on this channel I've talked about 2 cat horror games in a row now? Something about cats is just terrifying, man. Jesus, don't do that. What is wrong with you? Kitty Kart 64 is an indie horror game created by Snugboat 11 for the LSD Jam 2023 Game Jam. If you don't know, a game jam is a competition where people have a time limit to create a game around a theme. In the case of LSD Jam, it was inspired by the game LSD Dream Emulator for the PS1, which was this lucid-ass PS1 game where you had to explore a bunch of these surreal areas. I would absolutely love a copy, but I'd also love to afford food for the month. Playing through Kitty Kart, I could definitely see some LSD emulator inspiration, but more obviously, I could see the Mario Kart 64 inspiration. I mean, Kitty Kart's literally got 2/3 of that game's title in its title. See, look, Kart and 32 squared, bam. Wait, no, that's not right. I meant to say 32 times 2. I don't think 32 squared works in this case. Also, according to the creator, it takes inspiration from Big Rigs Over the Road Racing, which is sick as hell. I also love the style that this game's artwork adapts. It emulates that smooth N64 3D model style amazingly. You know what I mean, like those old Mario 64 promo images, or literally any box art for the console ever. Enough talking about the 3D models that I really want to eat for some reason. Let's finally talk about yet another funny, horrific cat game.
Welcome to Kitty Kart 64!
The intro was definitely hitting me with the nostalgia, emulating those old company logos that would play before any PlayStation or N64 game, crunchy video file and all. Also, this game was developed by Skrunklesoft Interactive, which is the actual name of the dev team who worked on this. That's just amazing. If I started a dev team, I'm naming it something silly like that too. Limbo Glop Studios will be real before you know it. The menu opens up with a great Mario Kart-y aesthetic and a voice that goes, "Welcome to Kitty Kart 64! Wait, hold on, this cat's literally me, look at this. Besides messing with some settings, the only thing you could really do is go to single player. There is a multiplayer setting, but it's really just for show. You can't actually run up Kitty Kart with your pals, sadly. I heard though that if you use code ToadBup at GamerSupps for 10% off, you can actually unlock a multiplayer mode. Hold on. Multiplayer mode and 10% off of some delicious beverages? I'd say that's an absolute steal. I'm not, there's no multiplayer mode, but use my code, it'd be funny. Starting up single player, you can immediately see the Mario Kart 64 influence at play. The character model isn't actually a 3D model, but it's 2D images of a 3D model that will give the illusion of 3D. This is what games like Donkey Kong Country and of course Mario Kart 64 would do, to use 3D without really straining the consoles with those models. I've never seen this technique utilized much in other games before, let alone a horror game. This combined with the janky 64-bit graphics, models phasing in and out of existence, and a soundtrack that strangely reminds me of the Toy Story 2 game, all leads to a game that captures that N64 spirit perfectly. Oh, and shout out to Andrew Pierce, the soundtrack is an absolute banger, go and listen to it when you can. The go-kart itself controls well, there's no real comments to give on it. You can look behind you, jump, honk your horn, interact with objects, it's all fairly standard. Getting into the actual gameplay, this first map has you finishing all 3 laps. You kinda just drive the first lap, and eventually when you make your way around the track once, the finish line seems to have been destroyed. And you can't even complete any more laps after this, you're stuck on 1 out of 3 for like the entire game at this point. Now, normally in Mario Kart, this would pretty much mean you're f***ed, but this ain't your granddad's Mario Kart, because in Kitty Kart, you could do some good ol' off-roading. Surrounding the actual racetrack is a lot of random structures, mostly letter and building blocks. There is one thing though, climbing up this little tower next to a crashed go-kart, which is already a bad sign, you could find this image lying on the ground. Yeah, this is where the game starts to get silly. Throughout the game, there's these creepy little drawings littered around, probably giving some crazy lore details, but I don't know, I'll try to piece it all together at the end. This is just the beginning of the silly shenanigans in this game, because as you stray further and further from the course, it becomes more barren and quiet, as you eventually just straight up fall off the side of the map. Also, there's traffic cones that are supposed to stop you from doing this, but instead you kind of just dink them around the map. At the end of every track, in different ways, you're transported into a new creepy area. In the case of this one, you're transported into this weird mud world. There's not really anything here for you except that you slowly sink deeper and deeper into the mud. You could try to save yourself, but yeah, eventually you're taking that mud plunge, buddy. No getting around it. There's this girl that's there too, sitting on top of something avoiding the mud entirely. She kinda just says "F you" though and doesn't let you up. You're laughing. You let Kitty Kart 64 themselves drown in mud, and you're laughing. The next level is the desert one, which this is where I see the LSD inspiration. You're just kind of falling through these random worlds, some of which are breaking apart and downright disturbing. I absolutely adore games like this, where it's almost more of an interactive, chaotic art piece rather than a video game. Kitty Kart is definitely more structured than that, but you can see how this game still dabbles in that randomness. Anyways, besides this friendly dog that just wants to feel the sun, there's not much here. You kinda just gotta drive around for a bit and then wait for everything to start falling apart. This might not look great for the player, but hey, at least the dog from earlier can finally feel something. You can also find another drawing here, and man, I can already tell my lore explanation is going to be horrible. Anyways, I guess the desert was just fed up with me at some point, because I eventually just phased through the ground into the next level. This stage is definitely a bit more, stylized, to say the least. The screeches of the damned and seizing bodies on the ground are the main focus of the map, not to mention the cyan and magenta color scheme. You aren't printing shit with that color scheme though, you're gonna need some yellow first. Trying to jump off the edge like usual is a bit tricky this time around because the map likes to troll you by moving blocks as soon as you go for an exit. Also, I apologize if I miss any letters or drawings or whatever. I have the worst sense of direction known to man, so I wasn't really sure where I had and hadn't been yet. After some light chicanery from the stage, you can eventually hop off the ledge. This next track is actually pretty different compared to the previous ones, as you now have to collect balloons. You're also just kind of in this void of nothingness with nothing but misspelled congratulation signs, balloons, and the cheers of children. Not to mention, some of these balloons have blood in them. Sure, that's always great. According to this drawing, there might even be children inside of the balloons. Gender reveal parties are getting so weird nowadays. Anyways, pop enough children balloons and you're rewarded with some spontaneous combustion. You're now in this overpass freeway area at nighttime. It's weird going from this super bright evil time to an actual road. Okay, maybe not, there's floating fish everywhere. There's also some new notes along the way, such as a cat in a city and a sheep crying rainbows. Not to mention that there's a wisecracking cat that's fishing nearby. Let's see what they have to say. You said it, corrupted cat entity. You have to make your way to a flooded area down below, which took me way too long to find, and hop into the water to make your way to the final area. Anyone who has a fear of very large parking lots might want to look away for this one. Told ya. Thrown into this giant ass parking lot, you kinda just gotta drive around aimlessly until you could find these red arrows spray painted on the ground. I'm sure whatever kind soul did this for me was doing so with great intentions, and nothing bad will happen. Eventually, you find an entrance going further down into the parking lot, and also a pile of bloody teeth on the ground. Possibly a bad sign, but I mean, worst comes to worst, I could just drive off the edge of the universe to escape to a new dimension. You drive further and further down as there doesn't seem to be an end in sight. all of a sudden, there it is, the finish line. Forget the fact that you have 2 more laps to finish after you cross it, it's finally there. How many wacky, zany worlds did I travel through to find this? Putting my life on the line, driving in a goofy purple go-kart. It was all worth it though, because I finally won! Wait, what? Why can't I move? The finish line was too good to be true, as after being stopped right before the line by some road spikes, this tall entity makes its way towards you. Slowly but surely, he reaches you and chops you to bits and pieces. Safe to say there's no escaping off the side of the map this time. Especially after you see the ending, this dude did not survive. At least the game congratulates you for winning. Thanks, I guess? And that was Kitty Kart 64. It's only a demo for a bigger game that's in the works right now, and that kind of sucks because that means it wasn't very long, but I mean, it definitely piqued my interest. I think it piqued Kitty's interest too. Something about an axe in the back of your head probably gets your attention. Originally, this was going to be a video about Nintendo 64 horror games as a whole, but after I played Kitty Kart, I was like, yeah, this is a sick-ass game, I gotta talk about this. I might still do that video though, so don't worry, Harvest Festival fans. Kitty Kart was a great short indie horror game with very little to complain about. If I had to get nitpicky, I'd have to say that I don't like how vague the lore is, but I also am just horrible at piecing things together like that, so that could just be a me thing. Okay, not looking up anything about the lore, this is my guess on what the story is. So maybe it was like somebody who died and this is like their purgatory. Maybe it was like a car crash or an axe-wielding maniac. Something that was in the game. I don't know, that's just my game theory. If I missed a drawing or a super secret Easter egg, feel free to shake your fist in the sky and comment, "Not cool, Toad chump. Never do that again." Kitty Kart 64 had so much going for it rather than against. The visuals were outstanding, really mimicking that Mario Kart 64 style perfectly. Like I said, I really love those 2D, 3D sprites they used. The music was great, controls were great, Kitty was great, he was purple and yellow after all. And the horror here is something I don't see done very often. Besides the last area being a more standard scary dark area with a big scary killer, the lucidness and randomness of the other zones really helped in setting the tone of a truly haunted and weird ass N64 game. The gameplay wasn't really outstanding, it was more about the experience of the game, but I liked that you had to look for multiple different ways to leap into the void. Great stuff. I'm very excited for the full game, because as of this video, it's currently in development and even has a Steam page. Go show them your support, and for every 1 download of the itch.io version, 1 Kitty Kart will toss themselves off a cliff. It's what Kitty would have wanted, come on. To be a purple cat driving in the void, such a simple life. God, I wish that was me. Oh, hell yeah, I'm in Kitty Kart! Alright, I need to find some mud to drown in or a cliff to jump off of.